Well, for 15 months it's been called a conflict, but now the head of the United Nations peacekeeping force in Syria is calling it a full-blown civil war. And the UN itself has become a target of the relentless violence there. UN observers trying to get into the rebel-held mountain town of Al-Hafar have had to turn back after their vehicles were attacked. Meanwhile, the United States has accused Russia of fanning the bloodshed by sending attack helicopters to Syria. Amy Bainbridge reports.
Few journalists have been able to get into Syria, so the international community has often been relying on amateur vision like this to piece together what's going on. Now UN peacekeepers and some journalists travelling with them have been on the ground to see more of the conflict firsthand. It's a dangerous mission. The UN convoy was attacked trying to access the town of Al-Hafar, which is held by rebels but surrounded by government forces.
We were confronted with angry crowds that surrounded our cars and stopped us from proceeding forward. They then started hurling stones and metal rods at our vehicles.
The UN has released this video showing the shelling in Homs and the effect it's having on the local population.
Nobody help us. Why? We are people, not animals.
The head UN peacekeeper, Hervé Ladsou, says Syria is now in a state of civil war, a claim rejected by the Syrian government. The US is warning the country's 15-month conflict could become even deadlier. US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says Russia is sending attack helicopters to Syria.
We have confronted the Russians about stopping their continued arms shipments to Syria. And we are concerned about the latest information we have that there are attack helicopters on the way from Russia to Syria, which will escalate the conflict quite dramatically.
While the US questions Russia's involvement, NATO says Moscow could help facilitate a political solution to the Syrian crisis. NATO Secretary-General Anders Fogh Rasmussen is visiting Canberra.
The more responsibility I think Russia has to use her influence in Syria to facilitate a political solution, and by that live up to Russia's international obligations.
The NATO chief has ruled out a Libyan-style military intervention.
The Syrian society is much more complex than the Libyan society, politically, religiously, ethnically. It's much more complicated. The opposition in Syria is not united. And all this boils down to the conclusion that a foreign military intervention is not the right path.
Earlier this year, China and Russia vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad to transfer power. Secretary-General Rasmussen says that was a disappointing outcome. Now, with opposition groups fractured, there's no end in sight for the people of Syria. Amy Bainbridge, Late Line.